Good morning, hobby friends. Welcome to Hobby Hotline. This is episode 292 of Hobby Hotline. I'm your old head host, Logan Ward, and with me today is my young head host, Mr. Heroes for Sale, Adam Palmer. How's it going, Adam?
Yeah, doing really well. Thank you.
That's great. And I think right now Uncle Rich is with us, and he is dealing in cards, as you can see in the background. But as you guys know, he needs no introduction. He is also the Han Solo of the hobby. So once Rich gets on, we'll talk with him. So I guess let's go ahead and we're not going to wait for Rich.
If there is one thing that we all know about Uncle Rich is that he does wheel and deal. So that's like I'm sure this isn't a I think he was saying that it was last minute somebody's coming by to pick up a bunch of bulk orders. So Rich will be with us, like he said, in a couple minutes.
Yeah, if we had the audio on, I think you could hear he's exchanging money, or I'm not exactly sure what the currency is he's trading right now, but we'll see. So yeah, let's go look at a few comments real quick before we get going. We've got Boom Slang, yo. Mad City Brew, good morning, everybody. Card Hunter says cheers. We've got Chris Ramsey on. Hello. Mad City Brew, he's Madison, Wisconsin. That's a great name. Stephen Mayer, good morning. Larry Gitlin, good morning. Wow, we got a lot of folks on. And Card Hunter says Virginia is in the house. So cool. All right, so I think I'm caught up on comments for the moment. So let's get going with, I guess, the elephant in the room this morning. Caitlin Clark. She signs with Panini. So, Adam, I'm going to go to you first. And what does this do for, trading cards? What does it do for the WNBA, women's sports? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's a huge win for Panini. It's one of their first wins that we've seen them get in like a year or two. Like it seems like every news story that comes out about Panini is like, a warehouse is burning down or something crazy is going on with them. That's a negative. I do think that this isn't just a W for Panini. I think this is a W for the hobby and sports cards in general, because if there's one thing that, I mean, to be honest, like I would love for there to be, and to connect this back to, I think the reason why Panini had to do this was they looked at what's happened this year with their football products. Like there's no Shroud autographs, there's no Bryce Young autographs, there's no Will Levis. And I don't think that necessarily hurt prices, but it made the experience of opening football products this year. I don't think we've really grasped the what actually is going to happen in the longevity of this year's products for football. And then with basketball too, like they don't have any Wembanyama autographs. So like, I think for Panini to step in here and say, even if they're losing all the licenses, it's a big win for them, because they are coming in and saying next year there will be, and I mean, this is, Caitlin Clark did declare for the WNBA draft, which, I mean, if, I've been following the WNBA for a little bit now, and so we've got the women's tournament, and then like literally like a week or two later is when the WNBA draft happens. So like the number one pick for the WNBA draft has already been determined. I think it's the Indiana Fever, I'm pretty sure. So it's not like the NBA where the NCAA tournament happens in April. The NBA draft is in like June, I believe. June or July, I forget the exact days, but it's not like that where there's a ton of time in between. I guess the Indiana Fever, they're looking at this and saying, oh well, we'll get Caitlin Clark, which I think is good, because she's not going to be moving too much of the regions with Iowa. Like we've seen, if you've seen any of the videos of what's been happening in Iowa, it's crazy, the lines that are really exploded that sport within that region. So I think her kind of staying in that Midwest area is really good. And the fact that we're going to get, I guess, because there's only really Prism right now that I can think of, unless Panini. I think now this is probably Panini's turning point with the WNBA to say, okay, we're going to come out with a couple more products, because the other thing is, I don't know if the WNBA and the NBA have the same licensing. I know that they're like partnered in a way. I just don't know, like, if with the NBA going to Topps and Fanatics, I don't know if the WNBA is going to be going to Fanatics as well. But the fact that we're going to get Caitlin Clark Prism autographs, or just Caitlin Clark autographs on fully licensed basketball products next year, I think is a significant deal, because, like I said, I think it's the fact that they didn't get any of those autographs for those top quarterbacks and football products this year. I think that's going to hurt the longevity of that product. I don't know what's going to happen with pricing, but like I said, it's a huge win for Panini, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, Rich, I know you heard what Adam said.
Yeah, I heard what Adam said, and I apologize for being a couple minutes late. One of my local dealer collectors just picked up a bunch of the bulk boxes we now sell for our Dot Havarim shows. I still get donations of cards, even though we don't give away bags anymore. And he very efficiently got everything done before the show began, because I was afraid I was going to miss some of the shelf. So it's a win-win-win-win-win. And speaking of win-win-win-win-win, one thing we were talking about in the green room, and I think, Adam, you had stepped to the men's room before while Logan and I were chatting, is Caitlin Clark has also signed an endorsement contract with one of the Indiana WNBA team's corporate sponsors, one of their major advertisers. She's getting, the thing is, she was getting her ducks in a row. So that was really the tip-off, using that basketball pun, so I apologize, that she was getting ready to declare for the WNBA. And, in her case, it's a toss-up. Do I stay an extra year in college?
Rich, is somebody tapping on a desk or
That's
something?
Me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could just hear the feedback.
Sorry, I won't tap anymore. I was having fun tapping. But that is a double win.
Yep, definitely.
That's a double win. She knew what she was doing, and she made a conscious business decision. I want to play in the WNBA. I mean, she's a college icon already. And I guess at a certain point you say, am I going to be able to make it at the next level? This is a interesting choice for people, because she had the option. The men's players, it's going to start happening with the men's players, And here's an underrated story. I want to switch for a second and not talk about Caitlin for a second. I will say, and then we'll go back to her. I don't know if you all have been following that the Dartmouth men's basketball team has voted 13-2 to unionize this week. That is a very underrated story when it comes to everything. Because can you imagine if we, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to this in any way. God bless the players in the Power 5 conferences. When their coaches are getting $10 million, they deserve money too. When the assistant coaches are getting the zillions of dollars, they deserve their money too. So God bless all of them. But can you imagine the card companies having to deal with another union? This could have long-ranging implications for the sports card market. And I think, at least in the WNBA, they already have their established players union. I think she's making a very wise business decision and a very wise decision, again, on a personal business level, to go to the next level.
Oh, and I agree with you, Rich. And I also read that she's got some pretty high-profile sponsors out there already. She's got Nike and Gatorade, State Farm, Bose speakers. Just those are just a few of them. I mean, she's got a lot of folks on board with her, and that's big.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think I saw funny, I don't know if this was a meme or if what it was online, but I saw some headline that Fox was saying that they were going to try and put together some sort of NIL deal for her to keep her in college one more year, because the Big Ten is on Fox. So like all of her games have been on Fox, and of course they're going to play every single one of her games. And the ratings have been so good that Fox is, like I said, I don't know if it's probably just a joke, because now that I don't think you can decommit, especially at this point, like with like the draft coming up in like less like a month from now, basically. I don't think you can decommit from the draft like that. But I just thought that was kind of funny that if Fox was saying that they're going to put together some sort of NIL deal to try and keep her in college for one more year.
And again, everybody's treating this as a business, which is why I'm so glad players in college are getting paid or able to take money. It just shows that for all these years, they've not been treated the way they should be treated.
Right.
And we've known that it's been like a little hidden secret of NCAA sports, and it gets brought up, and the money was always too good. But all of a sudden, and let's remember, a lot of this began when Ed O'Banion, who led UCLA to a national championship, discovered watching some EA Sports game that they were calling him Ed O'Banion with the same type of left-handed shot, and he wasn't getting paid for it. And this is after he had a few years in the pros. It's like, where's my money? And that really started the whole thing going. And, there's a lot of things about college sports that always upset me. But one of the things that always upset me the most was like if you had a coach have a nice run in the NCAA, March Madness, they could immediately, let's say, jump ship and sign with a bigger team,
right?
And they wouldn't have to sit out a year. But if the players who they recruited wanted to go somewhere else, they had to sit out a year. It was like, oh, coaches, the guys that are getting money, they get all the freedoms. The players, they don't get the same freedom. So I'm happy that the players are finally being treated and treating themselves with the same respect that they deserve.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think the money is there too now. I mean, I think with the transfer portal now too, I think that they have eliminated that year that they have to wait. I'm pretty sure. I think it works that way with basketball the same way it does with football, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, and this, I mean, I heard this, I forget who was, I think it was either KG, Kevin Garnett, or Paul Pierce's podcast. It was one of them two were talking about it, where right now, I mean, I would say I know more women's college basketball players than I know men's college basketball players, which is probably one of the first times I think that's ever happened. Paige Bucher, you got Angel Reese, you got Haley Van Lith. I mean, I have like I said, there's like a handful of players that I know in women's college basketball, which again, this is something that I think I talked about on, Hobby News Daily.
You did very well with Paige Buchers. You did a very good job.
With what I think now is we're seeing that the game is just as good. Like, I know that the joke in the meme is that, oh, it's boring, it's not that good. It's like, no, it's just as good. And I think now it's very similar, like with the WNBA and the MLS, where these leagues are only 25 years old. Like, if you were to go back to the inception of the NBA and go 25 years in, the WNBA is miles ahead of where the NBA was. Now, granted, obviously there's stepping stones and there's not as much friction between like the league, because now, you have some of the help with the NBA and you have some of the cross promotional stuff that you're able to do. But like the fact that the WNBA right now, and like the MLS is another example, the fact that there is a way for players to go professional and make a career out of being a professional within these leagues, I think it's only going to lead to more players younger deciding that they want to go do this. Caitlin Clark, for example, I think Caitlin Clark, Paige Buchers. I think the generation we're seeing now is one of the first that we're really seeing that's part of this. I don't want to call it like a golden generation like we do with soccer, but like a generation of players who saw that the league, 10 years ago when it was 15 years old, and said in 10 years, in 15 years, this league is going to be in a place where we can make it a profession. And we're seeing ESPN, we're seeing Fox, we're seeing these networks put the games on TV, and people are realizing like, oh, the players are good. Like, this is, and I get there was a meme that like the players weren't good, but it's like, it's just, it's a different style game, and the players are just as good. They're good in a different way, I think, with the NBA. I mean, the game is obviously going to be different. I mean, there's no denying that, but they're good. They're good in a way that maybe people weren't expecting, I would say. And it's the same with the MLS. It's good. The MLS may be a little bit different because it's definitely not as good as like the Premier League and stuff like that. But we're seeing players at a younger age determine they want to go pro, and there's actually an avenue for them to do that now, which I think is, it's a cycle that we're seeing where, they're doing that. And then also ESPN, all these networks are putting the games on TV, which I think is definitely helping the publicity of some of these leagues as well.
Well, ESPN is making, we talk about business decisions. ESPN is making a business decision that putting these games on is going to get them higher ratings and higher money. So, that kind of follows hand in hand with what you're saying, and, Logan's King NASCAR, and he's also a PSA Hall of Famer. So we're doubly blessed. But NASCAR in the early 90s was, and Logan can correct me, they were on the fast track to success too. And it was about 25 years after they were created. the early 90s were a golden time. Actually, it was about 45 years, sorry. But the early 90s were a golden time for NASCAR. It started building in the 79 Daytona 500 with the fight the fight after the final, the infamous fight after the final lap. The Yarboroughs, and one of the great highlights you'll ever see. But NASCAR was starting to build a national reputation.
We might be muted, Logan.
I'm definitely muted. Yeah, that was 1979, Rich, that you're talking about there. And you're right. NASCAR is exploded in the like late 80s, early 90s, kind of like what F1 is doing here in the States now. So, we're seeing that same kind of thing. But you're right. The TV money went way up for NASCAR back then. And it's still, pretty significant right now.
Because if you look at the races of the 80s, the cars look like the normal car the normal cars you saw driving on the road in the 80s. And the 70s and the 80s, they look like they may be souped up a little, but they look pretty similar to what you might actually see on the road. The NASCAR cars today, they don't look like cars you would see on the highway.
No, they're made specifically to run on the track. They're not stock cars anymore.
And that's a big difference. I mean, so that's how they evolved. But they evolved for, again, business reasons. And, NASCAR in the 70s and even the 80s was something almost everybody could get involved with financially. You didn't have to be wealthy to get into NASCAR. Now you have to be wealthy to get into whatever the current term is for the, we'll call it the major leagues of NASCAR. I know it used to be Winston Cup. I don't know, Logan, what is the actual term today?
It's just the Cup Series, or the Premier Series is what they're calling it now.
So they don't have a corporate sponsor for it really anymore?
No, they don't have a corporate sponsor for it anymore. So quick shout out to Rex. We're on the big screens. So hi, everybody, big screen. All right, a couple more comments.
Rex, we always appreciate you putting us on the big screen. And, it's interesting because, Adam, you pointed out something interesting. And when you talked about the Panini Prism boxes, and I mean, it's not just you, but I've seen several mentions of it. Not everybody's been getting all the autographs they're supposed to be getting out of these boxes that are costing hundreds of dollars.
Yes.
It's one thing if you're paying $60, $80, $100 for a box, you don't get an autograph, and there's an average of an autograph a box. Okay. You live with it. There's usually other things, but when you're paying $600, $700 for a hobby box, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Having Caitlin Clark in next year's Panini WNBA is a big thing.
Right.
Because then even if you don't get an autograph, there's a shot of getting a Caitlin Clark autograph. Just like in Upper Deck, there are all these shots of Connor Bedard cards. And I think I do want to talk about that a little later. There was a story that I heard about online, but it's the same principle. You're spending $300 for an Upper Deck box. You want to get the Connor Bedard card.
Right. Totally.
But you don't get one out of every box.
Yeah. From what I saw, I think I saw someone that said they opened a case or two cases. I forget the number. I think they were saying it was dropping one every I think it was one every 1.5 boxes is from what I was seeing, getting one of those cards, which, I mean, that's another story that I don't know if I've seen as much coverage on, if I'm going to be honest, with that Bedard card. Just really quick, and then I guess we can move on with the topics, is just that Upper Deck switched their configurations for their products from it used to be 12 packs with 8 cards, which would came out to about 192 cards. And this year, for the first time in, 10 years, they switched it from that number to 12 cards and 12 packs, which comes out to 140 cards. So you're getting 50 less cards per box, which, I guess maybe they looked at it a long term. It's just, I don't think it's a coincidence that, the hottest prospect that we've seen since Conor McDavid comes out and they switch the configuration so you get less cards in the box. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan. That seems a little bit scummy to me, but at the same time, maybe there are tons of different reasons that we don't know of, but to me, that's just, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that, if I'm going to be honest.
Well,
by the way,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Logan.
I was going to say on Go GTS Live Thursday night, they broke 2 boxes of the Series 2 Upper Deck hockey, and they did not get a Connor Bedard at all.
Oh, I wanted you to go back to Rex's post about that you showed again about how what Panini is using to print now. That's fascinating because they used to print down the street from our office at GCI. The fact that they're now using different printers tells me that they're understanding that they figured out a way to make an adjustment. So this is a good week for Panini, in terms
I'm
of
glad
that.
to see that. Okay, so real quick, I want to touch on something else real quick, and it involves a Panini, not Panini, an eBay auction that was this past week. It was on Tuesday. It was a 1952 Topps, and I'll put it up on the screen. A 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card that's altered, and as you can see, it looks like it's die cut. Let me get the comment off the screen real quick. But as you can see, it's altered. What do you guys think about that card? I mean, it went for $7,201 on eBay.
Well, if you use the 10% rule, and that's what I used to use for cards like that, that's probably not the worst price in the world.
No,
the card
I don't
is
think
real.
so.
The card is real.
Yep.
And you're not paying millions or hundreds of thousands or 100,000 for a card, and you are getting an affordable Mantle in a different price range. So I don't have a problem with that. I thought the price sounded fair, actually.
Oh,
And whether or not you think the card should be slabbed is a different issue. But, again, you're the slabbing company. Beckett said, this is a real card. Why shouldn't we put it in a holder? So do you blame Beckett? No. Do you blame the buyer person who bought it? No. Do you blame the seller? No. So I just think it's kind of a neat, interesting one-off card. And again, the price was not off the charts.
no, I agree. I think it's kind of cool. I mean, little did some kid know back in 1952. It's over 70 years ago, that a card that they cut up could have been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. They had no idea. I mean, when we collected kids as a card, we didn't care. I traded cards out on our driveway at our house, and the wind came and blew the cards, and we didn't really we really didn't care. We just had stacks of cards out on the driveway. So I thought it was really neat. Adam, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the not really rarity, I guess, because it's not necessarily rare, but or I guess maybe it is because it's the only. I don't know. I know people get perturbed by this, but technically it is a one of one. If you really want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, it technically is a one of one. I think that there are tons of different ways that you can buy this card. And if this card just, if it's way cheaper than any other type of grade for the card, then maybe somebody just wants to get something cool for their collection. I mean, that's also something maybe that we underestimate when people are buying some of these cards, is that sometimes people just want to buy them for their collection. And I like to talk about opportunity costs, and not to go back to Caitlin Clark, but just for 1 second, is like her one of one Bowman Superfractor autograph sold for $76,000. Now, is that card worth $76,000 in the current market? Well, someone paid that, so technically yes. But the opportunity cost of a card like that or a card like this, they're not going to come around that often. So I always add probably like 10 to 15% on, or I subtract between 10 to 20% of what the card's actually worth if it's a rare card like that, and say, well, that's the opportunity cost, because it's like, what, this card may never be sold again. Like this card, for example, this may just go into someone's collection and then just never be sold again. Maybe same with that Caitlin Clark card potentially. But like the reason I think people will spend money like that on a card like this is because, like I said, opportunity cost. This card may never come around again, and they just want to add it to their collection, and they're not really, the pricing of it, they're they're not worried about what the price of it is necessarily. Like, sure, there's probably a limit to what they'll spend, but they're not worried about what the prices that they're going to be buying the card for is, because it's not a card that they're going to be looking to spend, or excuse me, it's not a card they're going to be looking to sell anytime in the future. So, I mean, I whenever there's rare stuff like that, or rare or weird stuff like that sells for like kind of prices that don't make much sense, that's sort of how I look at a lot of those types of cards.
You know, I am reminded.
I'm with you.
I am reminded as I look at that card of a quote I remember from an old hobby magazine from 1979. And it went something like this. We all thought Walter Hall of Hall's Nostalgia, which for years took the back page in hobby publications, was out of his mind when he paid $680 for a 52 Mantle in February of 1979. It got up to $3,000 the next year, and then cratered to $500 in 82. And I wish I had bought one or two of them at $582.
Right.
It really did crash. So you could have bought one for less than $1,000 40 years ago. And now look at the price.
Right. Well, you know, this is a story for another day, but in late 1979, you know, that was when the hype of the rookie cards was really, really just ramping up. And I was just a kid, and I saved up enough money, just to, like I said, long story short, to buy a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card for $1,500 at that time. And there was a lot of hype. So, and everybody wanted that card. One came up in our area from a dealer, and I worked out a deal with him. But yeah, I think this 52 Mantle, this is an awesome card. I love it. I'm sure there's a great story behind it. I don't know what that story is, but you know, the fact that some little kid cut that out and put it in a scrapbook, and it's, you know, now, you know, slabbed, you know, over 70 years later, I just think it's a great story.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
In those days, most people who were trimming the 52s were trimming them down to Bowman size.
Yes. Yeah, they were. Because you see a lot of those out there in the field. You sure do. All right. All right. So next, here's something we're going to do. Rich, we're going to do something different. I think you were out while Adam and I were talking about this. But on NASCAR radio, we do a segment called the King's Court. And basically what the King's Court is that we use playing card types. And some of you guys out there that are watching right now know what I'm talking about. We use playing card types for the different levels of cards on eBay that we highlight in an auction. So I'll give you a quick overview real quick. We do a Joker, which is our funny card. We do a Jack, which is our young player. We do a Queen, which is our female player. A King is our high male player of the week. Our Ace is our one of one, and our Royal Flush is our highest price card. So guess what? We're gonna do a all sport version for Hobby Hotline of King's Court. So I'm gonna play the intro, and then we'll get started. So, and what I want you guys to do is when I show you these cards, we're going to comment on them, what you think about them. You think price was good? Do you like the card aesthetically? Things like that. So here we go. All right. Let's see. Let me get to where we need to be here real quick. Usually Val engineers this, and I make the comments. So let's start out. We're going to start out. It's a little bit different this week. We're going to go. I tell you what, real quick. I should have had this ready, and I did not have it ready. So everybody's going to get to see what the cards are here real quick. All right. We're going to start out this week. Now we're ready. We're going to start out this week with our Joker of the Week. This is our funny or odd card of the week. This was on the 7th of March. It's a 1987 Astro Boys Surfing Kelly Slater ESA rookie card. It's a PSA 10. They were asking $9,000 for it, and the seller accepted a best offer of $6,000. What do you guys think about this card? This is a surfing card. I've never really thought about surfing cards before.
Go ahead, Rich.
Okay. I wanted you to go first. Okay. So one thing I've learned being old is, not as old as President Biden or Donald Trump, but I'm old enough, is cards outside what we'll call mainstream sports. They sell a lot of times for a surprising amount of money because there aren't as many of them out there. And the minute I heard the name Kelly Slater, I went, famous surfer. And then I heard the term rookie card. I said, and then I'm looking at the grade, and if I'm not mistaken, does that say Gem Mint 10?
Yes.
Okay. So you've got a famous surfer. You've got a card I've never seen before. And I've seen a lot of stuff in my years, in my life. And, at ComC, we see tons of stuff. I've never seen that card before. So
Wow.
you've got a PSA 10. We have the PSA Hall of Famer here. So we have a PSA 10 of a famous surfer in a card that does not pop up very more. How can that not be a cool card?
Yeah, I think it's a very cool card. And he's also, he has 56 championship tour victories, and he's also an 11-time league champion. So he's like the GOAT of surfing.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, I think my sentiment towards this card is probably going to be very similar to what I just said about the Mantle card. Is the pricing for these types of cards is realistically a lot of the opportunity to buy the card. Like I think like I just mentioned that, because if you look at this type of card, I can't imagine this has got to be one of the only PSA 10s I would have to imagine, because I can't imagine there are even that many of these cards graded by PSA at all, because 1987 Astro Boy surfing is I don't know what if I don't know Astro Boy, I don't know what that is. And then Kelly Slater, he is one of probably the only surfers that I know of. I mean, I know the guy from that Disney movie, Johnny Tsunami, I think that's the only other surfer, and that's he is a fictional surfer. So it's like I don't even know really any other professional surfers. I know him. Kelly Slater is probably one of the only other ones I can think of. But so like with this card, I mean, it is, it's a really cool card. It almost has like the design of it is very surfer-esque, where it's kind of just like out there and there isn't really much symmetry to the card. And it's kind of just like almost like maybe a surfer designed it potentially, like where it's kind of just like the design is kind of like, like kind of weird a little bit. And so I don't necessarily know that much about surfing, if I'm going to be honest, like the professionals. And I know it used to be on like TV a little bit more, not as much that I can think of, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a really cool card. And like you said, it's probably the only PSA 10 that I can think of. And I mean, just in general, I think when it comes to, this is maybe a tip for people who are spying and selling sports cards in a way. Like, I think when it comes to, like really making a decent amount of money, and this is something that I did in the past. I don't know if it's necessarily 100% true still, but like finding potentially, off the beaten path sports that have not become mainstream is maybe one of the ways. And it's similar with this is kind of a prospecting conversation as well. So like, I'm not necessarily saying that this person picked it up because they're surfing is going to take off within sports cards, but like, it is something that we've seen throughout cards. Like soccer was one for me, example for me, that when I got into soccer, it was nobody really knew that much about the cards, and then it kind of got more popular, and a lot of the players kind of exploded. And that's sort of one way you can prospect within cards just in general. I mean, it's one way that I like doing it. I'm interested in things. I find myself more interested in things that other people aren't interested in. And maybe it's a trendy thing, or it's just a newer thing. But in general, that's what I've seen with myself, at least. I don't know if it's like that with other people too.
Okay, so I checked, and this is not violating any confidentiality because I just went to comc.com, which anybody can do without, and I looked, and there have been 20 total cards from this set ever submitted to ComC. 10 are still on the site, 10 have sold out.
That's amazing with the volume of cards
that
you
tells
guys see,
me
Rich.
We don't get this card. And that tells me that if we've only had 20 cards of the whole set ever submitted, this is a tough set anyway. So I'll repeat what I said. Tough, and I'll add the note. It is a tough card. And so, as you talked about opportunity cost, you're absolutely right, Adam. This may be the first one that ever popped up. I didn't check the PSA pop report. But I will tell you that if there's only one out there and it's a tough set and it's a PSA 10, not just being a registry person, but Kelly Slater is a famed surfer. You know, those 11 championships, all the other things he has done, the fact that even I know his name tells you it's a good purchase. And so it could be a little different, but a lot of times this is the type of stuff. And I saw Stuke had posted that he's coming to Dallas, so I assume I'm going to see him at the Dallas Card Show next week. But I know Stuke at a couple shows ago bought a whole bunch of really cool stuff. That was a table that had a lot of cool stuff at the thing, and all that was. There are people that if they know what they're buying in that, there's always not just the opportunity cost, but the long-term profit they're in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually just looked it up on PSA. There's actually more PSA 10s than I was expecting. There's 6 PSA 10s, which actually the pop percent or the gem percentage actually is pretty good because there's 28 total cards graded of this specific card. And then, like I said, 6 PSA 10s, 14 PSA 9s, and then kind of spread out through between PSA 8 and PSA 5. So I mean, I guess it's maybe not as rare as I was expecting in terms of a PSA 10, but still, I mean, we know how hard some of those cards from the 80s were to grade, just because of the way that they were produced. And Astro Boys, I mean, it's not like Astro Boys is it's not like Fleer, it's not like Topps, it's it's whatever the company is that made these cards. So like, I'm sure that they probably are hard to grade if I had to guess, like just in terms of like if you were to send all of them in, I do wonder how many more of them would even come back PSA 10, which, I mean, I guess 6 of 28 is pretty good. But still, I did just look up some of the more information about this card.
That's 3 of 14, which is about a 23% ratio for PSA 10s.
Yep.
But then again, you're going to submit what you think are the best condition cards, because I think you said there were 14 9s as well.
Yep.
So it's 20 out of 28 or 9s or 10s, which is 71%.
Right.
All right. So let's move on real quick. Mike Petty says that the GOAT is Mickey Dora. He practically invented surfing. So there's been a lot of comments on surfing cards. There's a lot of surfing fans out here. I did not know. That's amazing. All right. So next, let's go to our Jack of the Week. This is our young player, and it is going to be CJ Stroud. This card was sold on the 1st of March. It's a PSA 10 2023 Topps Now CJ Stroud rookie card blue out of 50 on card auto. The seller was asking $4,500 for this card, and they settled for a best offer of $3,200 for this card. So thoughts, fellas? Go. I'll go with you, Adam, first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Stroud obviously probably had the best season of any rookie quarterback. His rookie autographs are probably pretty limited. I mean, he signed that exclusive with Topps, and I don't think I don't know what other products I can think of that CJ Stroud would be in that would be a football product. I know he did have that set with Tyson Beck, who's like a sports graphic designer, one of my favorite sports graphic designers, if I'm going to be honest. So they had a set with they were Topps Now, but they were like a different type of Topps Now, where it was like a designed card that I thought was pretty cool. And so, he doesn't have that many rookie autographs. So I think when we look at the longevity of Stroud autographs, like this is going to be one of very limited amounts of autographs that he has from his rookie year. So, I'm not going to, I'm going to pass on calling it opportunity cost once again, that the autos are more rare, because I've said that about the past couple cards. But with this one, there aren't going to be as many rookie autographs as there would have been if he had signed with Panini or if he had signed with Panini, I suppose. That's my thoughts on the card in general.
Well, it's a numbered card. It's on card as an autograph. It's numbered to 50.
Mhm.
It's a good card. As you pointed out, he had a really good year. And if you notice, nobody really cared on this card whether he or not he was wearing the Houston Texans uniform. He's wearing a suit and tie.
Mm.
As having no impact on the card value. Let's be honest. I don't play in that world.
Yeah, there's no logos or anything on that, so that's actually amazing. When you think about it, I didn't even think about that, Rich.
If somebody's happy with that card, the seller and the buyer are happy, so it's a win.
Oh yeah, definitely a win-win. I think it's a nice card, and congrats to the buyer and the seller. I think that's a great deal.
Definitely.
All right, so let's move on to our Queen of the Week, and of course, look who it's going to be. It's going to be Caitlin Clark. This card was sold on the 2nd of March. It's a 2023 Bowman U Sapphire Caitlin Clark on-card auto, number 6 of 10, with an inscription, by the way. The seller was asking $6,999.99, and the card went for $4,500 on best offer for that card. So, Rich, I'm going to go to you.
Okay, the opportunity cost, there's only 10 of them.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, again, I don't play in this world. It's not going to end up in I don't carry Pelican case. It's not going to end up in my Pelican case because I don't even have a Pelican case. I don't even want a Pelican case. But it's numbered to 10. It looks like it's an on-card signature. It looks really cool. She's wearing her Iowa uniform, her Iowa jersey, which made her famous. Again, if everybody's happy, I'm happy. And it's fine by me. And and those that do play in that world, they agree. This was a nice card at a nice price. And I'll accept their decision because they know more than I do about that. When I go to a card show and I see one of those happy, shiny tables, my eyes glaze over. But I'm fine with this. Again, this is, as long as two people agree on a price, that's more than sufficient.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. The only other thing I can think of is I guess I'm happy that Topps figured out a way to change college cards pretty significantly. One of the things that I think people are maybe underestimating a little bit is the Bowman products that Topps has been coming out with they're revolutionary for the hobby, or at least for modern hobby. I'm sure probably in the past there's been cards that have come out of college players while they were playing in college in their college uniforms. But, when Panini took over, it wasn't called NIL. It was whatever the college license was. I don't know what it was called before they called it NIL. But when Panini took that over, they weren't coming out with cards of college players until they were professionals already. And at that point, who cares who wants a Zion? I mean, I guess I'm just using an example. Zion and Duke is maybe not the best example, but who would want let's just say maybe it's Trevor Lawrence, for example. Who would want a Trevor Lawrence Clemson card when it's you just have to wait a couple months and you're going to be getting Jaguars, which, maybe not the best example, but I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that, Topps and Fanatics have revolutionized with Bowman the college market, I think. And for this one, for example, Go Hawks on the inscription here is, if you're an Iowa collector, I'll be interested to see what ends up happening with Caitlin Clark's cards once she goes somewhere. I think especially if she goes to Indiana, like I said, being in that Midwest area, I think is going to be good for her popularity. I don't think necessarily any team she went to, she would become any less popular. If she comes into the league and she does what she's been doing in college, which, look, I know a lot of people are saying that she needs to win a championship, or she, once she gets to the WNBA, she's not going to be shooting 40 shots a game. It's I don't know what you're talking about. She probably is. If she is going to come into the league and, maybe there'll be a little bit of a drop off, but eventually she is the type of player that I think is going to continue to get better because that's what she's done throughout her career in college. and I talked about this a little bit on the show before, was like, I don't know if it's a male versus female perspective here when people are talking about Caitlin Clark not being the GOAT of women's or of college sports because she hasn't won a championship. It's like, yeah, sure, I guess so, but it's like, are we even watching the same game? Like, are you, if you watch any Caitlin Clark game, the stuff that she's doing out there on the court is like insane. She's doing exactly what Steph Curry did with the NBA when Steph Curry and the Warriors went on those crazy runs, and it's just like, I'm shocked that companies like ESPN or Fox or anybody is putting on somebody who is willing to just be like, no, she's really not that good, she has to win a championship. It's like, that has been in the conversation, but it's like, it's been in the conversation for players who are not the clear and defined number one player. I don't know. So with Caitlin Clark, again, like, we kind of talked about her a little bit earlier on in the show. I just think that Topps and Fanatics did a really good job with Bowman and kind of revolutionizing and changing the game with that too. I think that was definitely a good thing.
Adam, there was one point I did want to, and you were mostly right on what you talked about Panini and the college uniforms, but there was one major advantage they had by getting those college licenses back in the day. This is whatever, 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago, whatever. Like when Panini signed Charles Barkley, he wasn't in the NBA anymore. And let's say they didn't have any, Philadelphia 76ers or Phoenix Suns photos or Houston Rockets photos available real quickly. They could find an Auburn photo. Right. And his first signed Panini card is an Auburn card. So they could actually take retired players where it may not have mattered as much. If you're a retired player, and let's just say, and I want to kind of make this not, if you're in the NBA, you're a great player. I mean, you may not be a great NBA player, but you're a great player if you made the NBA. The 75, 76 Indiana team, the last one, I believe, that went undefeated for a season. None of those guys were as good in the pros as they were at Indiana. But if you get Scott May signing an Indiana card, or Bobby Wilkerson, or Tom Abernathy, or Kent Benson, or Quinn Buckner, who had the best NBA career of the group, and you have them sign an Indiana card, it's probably better than any card they would have signed in a NBA uniform.
Totally, 100%.
So there is some logic to using at times, but you're right. If you sign Trevor Lawrence to an autograph contract like his college, remember the rules are changing too now. But in those days, you don't sign him till his college career ends. So let's say it's February, and then he gets drafted in April. So you have a very short time frame to actually get his college cards that anybody would want signed, because he'll be a Jaguar 6 months later. Right. So there is a big difference in an active player and a retired player, because a retired player, you might say, getting them in the college uniform makes a lot more sense. The active player, you might say, hey, getting them in the NBA uniform or the NFL uniform makes a lot more sense. So there is a demarcation, at least in my opinion, and depending on the circumstance.
Okay, so we still got 3 more cards to go. So let's move on to our King of the Week. Our King of the Week, this was on the 6th of March. It's a 1963 Topps number 537 Pete Rose rookie card, SGC 8.5, centered, high-end card, it says. They were asking $36,000 for this card. And guess what? Somebody went click, and they bought it for $36,000. That's a nice card right there. I love Pete Rose. What are you thinking, Adam?
Yeah, I think when people are buying these cards too, like, somebody spending $36,000 on a sports card, that's not the last $36,000 they have in their bank account. If they're willing to spend $36,000 on a sports card, it's, and I don't like pocket watching or comparing it to anything else, but like in general, like you kind of got to imagine that, like, this is for somebody who's willing to just do a buy it now on a sports card like this. You got to imagine for some people like us, it's like going to the store and buying like a bag of chips, or like buying like a nice steak or something like that. You got to imagine that it's not the last $36,000 they have. So and it's similar to like for us, it's like the $36,000. That might be like a 30. That's like, well, you know what? It might be like me going to Walmart and buying like a new PlayStation game or something like that. It's like, it's maybe a little bit more than I should be spending on a video game, but at the same time, it's like, well, here's that's my logic at least behind when I see prices like this, and I mean, especially somebody who is into Pete Rose too. They're probably I would say they're probably a little bit older, so again, maybe they're not worried about the 36,000 versus just having the money. I don't know exactly. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Rich?
It strikes me as a lot of money. Having said that, I don't know what the market is on these high-end Pete Rose cards, but as you pointed out, Logan, someone clicked immediately or at some point to buy it now and just said, I'm done. So somebody thought it was either a good card for their collection or a good short or long-term play.
Yeah. Mike Petty says it's a tax write-off.
Could be.
Well, it's quite the gamble.
It is quite the gamble. Do you guys think he'll get in the Hall of Fame after he dies? I think he probably will. And if he does,
I was saying it was quite the gamble as a pun. Think about it.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's right.
Gotcha, Rick.
It went over everybody's head. Sorry about that.
Pun intended.
I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to get in. I just think that. No, I don't know. It depends. I think baseball. We all complain about the Baseball Writers Association. Like they're, the few that I know of off the top of my head, they're all super annoying. So I just think that they're on their. The Baseball Writers Association won't put Barry Bonds into the Hall of Fame, even though Barry Bonds is the only reason that a lot of them have jobs. It's very, I don't like it at all. It's just, the 90s was, baseball was dying, and then you have the home run races, and same with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. Like, those are the reason why these baseball writers have their jobs. Like, they know that, right? Like, so it's very, they're on their high horse in a way that it's like, it doesn't even need to be. It's like, who cares? Like, what integrity are we really keeping nowadays, keeping these players out of the Hall of Fame? It's like, who cares? Just put them in. Like, at this point, like, they're way past being able to get voted in. You'd probably have to do some sort of special voting. It's very similar to like Reggie Bush losing his Heisman for doing what the league is doing now with, and I know that, Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, different, I think, than Pete Rose. Cause I think Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds have or Mark McGwire have a better chance of getting in than Pete Rose because of, Pete Rose was gambling. So like, that's not, but also now it's like people aren't gambling on the games, but now it's like everything is gambling. Every commercial break, it's like put $5 down, get $200 in bonus bets. It's like, at some point they're going to be limiting what you can do with these betting. Cause it's just like, I saw a funny video that was like, it was like the sports gambling CEOs being like, wait a second, gambling is addictive. And people are sending us all of their money. Oh no, that's crazy! I can't believe it. It's like at some point they're going to have to figure out how to change what's going on. Maybe similar to what social media, or I don't know, with restrictions on it. But I think Pete Rose probably doesn't get in, unfortunately, just because of gambling. But like the other players, they should be getting in 100%. And I mean, I don't know. It's very on the Baseball Writers Association is on their high horse, and as you can hear in my voice, I'm not a super big fan. But once all of those baseball writers switch and they kind of retire, and we get a new generation of baseball writers in there, maybe they start to look at some of these players and put them in. But I don't know. I mean, it really is speculation at this point.
Yeah, Mike Petty says his wife would want a new car and a Louis Vuitton purse if he bought that. I call that a grudge buy. My wife does that to me. If I buy something, if I spend, $300 or $400 on a card, it's like, oh, what do I get to buy now?
Well, my wife when my car got totaled, my wife ended up buying a new car. She promised she wouldn't do it without me, but she did it without me. And let's just say that if we had the money, I could buy that car, and it's less than what her new SUV cost her, and we'll leave it at that. So you can trade. You can actually not even get full value for your SUV out of that card. And you talk about Pete Rose. The thing with Pete Rose is that it's become, with all the associations with gambling, really murky. Because as Cooter brought, I like what Cooter is saying though. Cooter is right in one thing. Rose didn't bet on every game. Let's say he bet on 100 games a year. If you're a bookie with common sense and you know he's only, and there's 162 games, he's only betting his team to win on 100. He never bet his team to lose, by the way. But then if you're a bookie and you have common sense, you say, why is Pete not betting on his team to win this game?
Yeah, it's a catch-22. Like, if he bets on the team to win and they win, that's great. But when he doesn't bet on the team, in a way, technically he's betting on his team to lose because he's not betting for them to win. So it's like it doesn't really. I'm sure, I don't know if he didn't think of it that way, but that's sort of what ended up. I think that's what happened. Like, if he wasn't betting on his team to win, technically he was betting on his team to lose by not betting, I guess.
Correct. Yeah. And again, it's become murkier with all the associations baseball has with gambling. As for Bonds, Sosa, McGuire, to me, the one with the most interesting case for the Hall of Fame is Barry Lamar Bonds. Because he was a Hall of Famer before the steroids.
Right, 40-40. Yeah, he was good.
He was going to be in the Hall of Fame. He would have been voted in. He would have been first ballot.
Yeah.
It might have been second ballot because the writers didn't like him. But he would have been a Hall of Famer. He would have been a Hall of Famer a year or two after he was eligible. That year or the second year, he'd been in the Hall of Fame. And then when all that happened, all of a sudden, he's no longer a Hall of Famer. He's the one case I think you can make that he should be in the Hall of Fame, what he did before any of the allegations. Even Roger Clemens, I can make the case not quite.
Okay.
Roger Clemens is in a group of pitchers, some of whom are in the Hall of Fame, some aren't. Barry was a Hall of Famer. Sosa and McGuire weren't Hall of Famers before all that. I mean, Mark McGuire had a couple of years where he hit 199 or 202. But let's go on to the next question.
Yeah, let's go on to the next one. This is going to be our ace of the week. And as you can see, this was sold on the 5th of March. It's a 2018 Panini Kaboom Kevin Durant 1/1 green, number KKD. It's an 8.5. The seller was asking a pretty high price of $63,999. They settled on a best offer of $20,000 for this card. For a Kaboom, that's pretty steep. What do you guys think?
Kabooms are very popular, by the way.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So, but the fact that the seller took 1/3 of the price he was asking tells you even he or she knew the price was way too much at $63,000.
Yeah. I think too, like the Kabooms and cards like Kabooms where the inserts, like the case hits or whatever. I think down the road, those are probably going to be the types of cards that a lot of people look back on. And, I know that people hate comparing them to like PMGs, but it's like, how can you not? They're literally just PMGs. Like that's what the card is. Like it's the color, the numbering, the design of the card. Like, sure, it's more of a cartoony version, but it's like, they're just the modern day version of what a PMG is. So like, I think that's one thing that I look at when I look at these types of cards and say, well, I mean, they're not cards that I'm buying necessarily, but they're cards that I think, looking back in the grand scheme of sports cards and the history of cards, that we're probably going to look at them very similarly, where, I don't know, I think nowadays we look at them and say, well, we don't want to compare. We don't like comparing a new stuff to our old stuff that we liked. So like, for the example, like the PMGs, we don't like to say that these cards are like PMGs because we like the PMGs more. But liking something more doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't one thing on either direction, I guess, is one way I think about it.
Rich?
Yeah, I think we've said what we need to say, and it's a cool card. And obviously, again, the buyers and sellers came to a price they were happy with. Kevin Garnett, going back to one earlier conversation, Kevin Garnett came straight out of high school to the NBA, in the days when you can do that before the one and done that came in the early 21st century. But that's a different subject. But Durant's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yep.
He's got NBA titles. He would be a top 50 or top 75 or top 100 player the next time they do that. So again, I don't have a real problem. I mean, I would not want to buy that card, but somebody else thought it was a great card to buy, and they had the money and they came to a deal. So all in favor.
I like this comment real quick before we move on. Jeff's Card Journey, he says, I saw a Propstein interview recently. He's trying to get eBay to have the sellers reduce all the overinflated buy now prices that they're clogging up eBay. I agree. There's a lot of pie in the sky high prices that I think they're absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we even have one in NASCAR. There's a Dale Earnhardt card. It's out of 94 that somebody's asking $1 million for. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Logan, can I ask you a question then?
Sure.
I set up at a lot of shows. I don't know, and I know you don't set up at shows. And Adam, do you ever set up at a show?
No, I haven't before.
Okay, so I set up at shows. In fact, I'll be at the Dallas Card Show next week. Now, I've learned that if you price stuff, we'll even say reasonably, you still are going, especially at a show, you're still going to get knocked down on your prices. And if you say you're firm, people think you're terrible. So you almost have, to me, fixed price makes sense. But if you're dealing in a certain world, you almost have to start higher than you want to start, because then you're going to get knocked down anyway.
Right.
And why start low where you're going to get knocked down? Start higher. This is what some people think. You start higher, so when you get knocked down, then you're getting what everybody really wants, what you really want to get out of the card, and what they should pay for the card.
Well, I'm with you on that, Rich, to some extent. I mean, I wouldn't want to, as a seller, I wouldn't want to leave money on the table.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you put a card that you clearly know that say is worth $10,000 and you put a price on it of $1 million, that's
ridiculous. I will accept that, but if I put 20,000 on it, if I worth it's 10, I may be putting 20 because I may think it has an upward trajectory, or I may think that card is, I'm going to take the 10,000 and maybe I'll get 12 or 15. Again, I'm not trying to rip somebody off. I'm just saying that it may be worth more.
I think too, like also a card like that Dale Earnhardt card that they have listed for $1 million. At least from my experience, I've seen a lot of cards that are listed on eBay for bin that are like just astronomically way higher than you would want to pay. It's more or less just someone is trying to be like, hey, I have this cool card here. Like here's maybe they're trying to promote something or something along those lines. I think there was I was doing a little bit of research a way back. This was years ago on a Pete Alonso, the Pete Alonso Superfractor autograph was listed on eBay for $300,000. And I was I posted on Instagram, and that's when somebody told me, they were like, oh yeah, people just post cards on eBay for way higher because they just want to put it on display. Basically, they want to put it, they're not looking to sell the card necessarily. They're just looking to basically be like, hey, I have this card, look at my profile or whatever.
Yeah. All right. So
and frankly, there are times at a show, I know some vendors who will put certain cards in their showcases at too high of a price because it's just a cool card that's like eye candy.
Right.
And they want people to say, hey, you have that card. Or they'll put a vintage, if they have mostly new cards, but they want to try to buy vintage cards if somebody's walking around, they may put a vintage card or two in their showcase, even if it's too high priced, just to show people, hey, I will buy older cards.
Right. Okay, so we're already in Hobby Hotline overtime. So let's get to our last card of the King's Court. This is going to be our highest priced card of the week. This was sold on the 7th of March. It's a 1961 Wilt Chamberlain rookie card, Fleer basketball, card number 8. It's graded a PSA 8. Looks really, really nice. This card went out for bidding, and it landed at $38,900 with 61 bids. What do you guys think real quick about this card? I love this card. It's a beauty.
It's a rookie card. 162 years ago this week, he had the 100-point game.
Wow.
I mean, again, it's a 60 some odd year old card in PSA 9. And that's an older PSA 9, so I suspect that's a really strong PSA 9. That looks like an older slab to me. And it looks like a really sweet card.
Yeah, the 60, in my opinion, I think the 61 Fleer is one of my favorite sets just in general. I think it's, it really was one of the sets that was produced early on that I think has really shaped a lot of what we look at now within sports cards. So, I mean, I'm always a fan of, I mean, Wilt Chamberlain, especially too. I mean, I know that there was a funny, like meme, I think going around on TikTok that people were trying to say that the 100-point game was fake because there's no footage of it or something. And then I don't know. I think it's like the moon landing. Like people say the moon landing was fake because it's like, how could you really do that? And it was just filmed in a studio or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. I'm in the sense that it probably happened, like, you know, because I think the joke was that there's so many other games that have footage. How is what is supposed to be the most famous basketball game of all time? There's just no footage of it, and people are trying to piece together footage, and it just wasn't really working out or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the 61 Fleer set, I think, is, in my opinion, one of my favorite sets because it really kind of was revolutionary in the hobby back, you know, in 61, which I'm definitely a fan of.
Yeah. And, you know, I've seen a lot of cards come out of these packs that are way off center. So to have a nice centered version of this card, I think is phenomenal. It's a beauty.
I'm going to leave and I'm going to conclude the episode with a really cool Wilt Chamberlain story.
All right.
When I did stats at the U.S. Tennis Open, we covered 4 or 5 courts back in the day. The grandstand, the stadium court, court 3, and court 16. And sometimes we might do something on an outer court, especially the first couple of days of the tournament. Wilt would get a CBS badge. He was kind of a big fan of women's tennis. What a surprise.
Yeah.
At court 3, I was in the media section. And the security guard who's supposed to keep people out never showed up. So I'm trying to do my job of doing the stats for the match while keeping people out of the thing. Well, it's a women's tennis match, so Wilt comes and watches it and sees what's going on. He says, "Do you want me to be the security guard?" And I said, "Please, yes, thank you." I will tell you, when Wilt started sitting there and checking badges, not one person got in that shouldn't get in. And I was very appreciative of, and we would just chat a little bit. He was actually doing somebody else's job, and he appreciated the fact that I was doing my job. And so I've gotten a lot of respect from Wilt ever since that time.
That's cool. All right. So that's this week's King's Court for everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. This was our special Hobby Hotline edition with all sports. So really cool. So I guess we're in Hobby Hotline overtime. We're an hour and 7 minutes into this thing. Next week, I just want to let people know who are going to be on next week. We're going to have Danny Black. We're going to have Horatio Ruiz, and Chris Carlin from PSA is going to be on here. He is now part of the Hobby Hotline team. He's come back. So we will have him on next week. So that's going to be awesome.
I will be at the Dallas Card Show next week, and I know fellow Hobby Hotline host Dr. Jim Beckett will be at the Dallas Card Show next week, and there may be others as well. It's always fun. It's a 600-700 table show, 10 minutes from my house, 6 times a year. Kind of hard to argue with that.
That's cool. So what are you going to be doing, Adam?
I mean, I just bought a PS5 recently. So probably watching. I will be seated watching Hobby Hotline next Saturday when it is on. Probably playing some Madden or something. We'll figure it out. But yeah, definitely. I think I'll be back on in a couple weeks too. I think I'll be hosting and stuff. I mean, I always love jumping on here and doing the show too. But yeah, next week I maybe I'll call in or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I'm feeling up for it for next week.
Okay. Yeah. I don't really have a whole lot going on. I know I'll be probably fondling some cards later on today, maybe do a few videos. So that's my weekend. I'm definitely going to be watching NASCAR races. So it'll be a fun weekend as usual for me. So the chat was on fire this week. I really appreciate everybody out there. We love you guys. Keep on going, man. It's just, it's a great hobby, and we appreciate everybody. So with that, I guess we will see you folks next week.
Absolutely. Thanks. See ya.
All right. See you guys.